Greetings and welcome to this edition of
Positronic.
I'm Barry P. Cook, and I'm here to give you my review of the season premiere of the Orville Season 3. It seems like we've been waiting for this since forever, but it's finally here. I stayed up late to watch it, and I'm going to tell you what I thought of it. The episode was called Electric Sheep, which is a reference to the story by Philip K. Dick, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, which of course became Blade Runner. So that's very cool. They started off with a title card memorializing Norm McDonald, who of course is in this season because he finished his voiceover work before he passed, but who of course has passed. But then the episode actually starts in earnest and it looks absolutely amazing. I always thought the show looked good, but it seems like they kicked things up a notch when they went over to Hulu because it looks fantastic. The story itself starts with the doctor's son, Marcus, dreaming about, I guess, the battle with the kaylon that occurred last season. But he wakes up and realizes it was just a nightmare. Meanwhile, Isaac, who of course is kaylon and who of course had a part in the battle, which, cost some lives, is being shunned by the crew. He goes to the mess hall and nobody wants to sit with him until one crew member named Burke does sit with him and explain to him why everybody's, not happy with him. And she mentions that, she barely survived the battle while she was serving on a ship called the Quimby, which of course is hilarious because it's a reference to Mayor Quimby from The Simpsons, which is in turn funny because that character is a spoof of the Kennedys. It's like a joke within a joke within a joke. Anyway, he goes back to his lab after this encounter in the mess hall and finds the word murderer scrawled on the wall. At this point, we're 10 minutes into the episode, and I still miss the super hot season 1 security chief lady. Anyway, it turns out that Isaac has been getting this kind of crap from the crew for a while, and Captain Mercer gives Burke a dressing down over what she said to him, after which she gives him an earful too. But the captain then says that as much as Isaac being aboard is a risk, he is really the only person that gives them any kind of inroad to understanding the kaylon and trying to figure out how not to get destroyed by them. So he felt his being there was necessary, which, I don't understand why that means he has to be on active duty as opposed to like in a cell. But anyway, that's the story. And this woman says, this Burke woman says that, yes, she gave him a hard time, but she didn't write the graffiti. So all this time, the ship has been in space dock undergoing repairs and upgrades. And some of those are occurring on the outer hull, like on what would be the saucer section on a Star Trek ship, with crew members making these repairs and upgrades, walking around in the hull in spacesuits. And Yaphet is one of the crew members, that of course being the Norm McDonald character, which is cool because usually he's just a blob or he takes the shape of something else, but we don't really see him take the shape of a person, but in this, he's in the shape of a person walking around in the spacesuit, and it's pretty funny. Soon enough, Malloy shows up with what would seem to be a little fighter jet type style pod thing that the Orville will now be carrying. It's like a fighter akin to the Vipers on Battlestar Galactica. After he lands it in the shuttle bay, he talks with Burke about how he doesn't trust Isaac either. When Isaac points out that the ship is now 56% faster since the upgrades, the crew member he's talking to says it might be time for helmets and seatbelts, which is kind of funny because, the old joke is that why do they not have seatbelts on the Enterprise? It's kind of funny. When the doctor shows up and asks Isaac how he's doing, he says he's functioning within normal parameters, which is interesting because that's what Data always says. Malloy takes the new fighter on a shakedown cruise, flying it around the ship, while fighting off drones that are being piloted from the bridge by Burke, who can apparently visualize four-dimensional geometries, which comes into play here because, you know, she's moving the drones in what we would call 3D space, but I guess it's 4D space. And he wants her to use her abilities so that he's really challenged. So it comes up that she can visualize four-dimensional geometries in her head, which is just incredible. Most people have trouble with accurately envisioning 3D spaces in their head. But that's not just me, is it? Anyway, it turns out that the doctor's son, Marcus, did the graffiti because he's angry with Isaac, and the doctor gets Isaac to come over and talk to him, but it only results in Marcus telling Isaac that he wishes Isaac were dead, after which it would seem that Isaac commits suicide by zapping himself with something that totally shuts down his brain, which I kind of figured he was going to do at some point in the episode once he started getting hazed, and after the kid said, "I wish you were dead," I just didn't know he was going to go right and do it. But he did. And in order to see whether they can revive him at all, they send Yaphet inside of him. He has to like slime up and go in and see if there's any way to bring him back. But it turns out, according to him, that there isn't. The doctor then finds herself troubled that she doesn't know how to feel about Isaac, whether she still loves him or not. So the first officer suggests that she do the opposite of what people normally do, which is avoid spaces and places that remind them of the person they're trying to work out their feelings over, and to engage with those things. The captain then gives Isaac a very nice eulogy, which Marcus overhears. We again see the doctor, and she finds her younger son visiting with a hologram of Isaac. And she has to explain to him that, you know, doing something like that is a way of not letting go, and it can make it very difficult for someone to accept loss and move on, which, you know, you eventually have to do. And then a moment later, she runs her own simulation from when she was with Isaac, although she doesn't populate it with him, in an attempt to take the first officer up on her advice. And she has a very poignant moment where she's sitting alone in the simulation of a restaurant, I guess, where she had been with Isaac when they were together, and she kind of breaks down and sobs a little bit. And it was, the cinematography in the scene was very well done. It was shot in a poignant way. The actress did a phenomenal job, you know, portraying someone who is hurting and grieving to the point where, you know, they're brought to tears, to the point of like sobbing. And, you know, it was done without music, if I remember correctly. So it was just, you're just there in the moment, and it's raw, and it was just excellent. I thought it was a great portrayal of how grief can grip you. With the ship's refit complete, Captain Mercer takes her out. We then join the chief engineer in his quarters immediately after a romantic encounter with a very interesting looking young lady and a very attractive looking young lady, alien person, whom he ends up having a conversation with about suicide. And it turns out that on her planet, they don't judge people who commit suicide, which, you know, he doesn't really understand. But something in the conversation triggers him to go look for a trace of Isaac's consciousness buried within him. And he finds it. It turns out that the only person who can make use of this thing that he finds to bring Isaac back is the person that hates him, Burke, because of her ability to visualize four-dimensional geometry, which it's going to take in order to bring him back, because it's too sophisticated for the computer. It requires like the human ability to sort of, I guess, visualize, which they're saying the computer on the Orville can't do. I'm kind of surprised by that. But anyway, it has to be done within a certain period of time before it won't be possible to bring him back. When Mercer asks her to do so, she declines, despite him imploring her, even if the only reason is she does it to show others that humanity is better than they've been judged to be, but she still declines. before they can resolve the issue, the ship is attacked by the Kaylons, a single Kaylon ship, and is taken into the atmosphere of the closest planet to hide, where it's bombarded by a violent storm. So Mercer then pulls a Pike. The Pike maneuver. No, not the Pike maneuver, but he copies Captain Pike, that rat bastard, to trick the Kaylon ship. He destroys a shuttle full of torpedoes under the cover of the storm to make it look like they got destroyed, so the Kaylon will move off. It's very funny because there's no way, that one knew what the other was doing. From show to show, they just kind of came up with the same thing simultaneously, which we know because the episodes aired so quickly after each other. So that's pretty interesting, actually. But time is still running out, so the captain orders Burke to assist the engineer in bringing Isaac back, but she again refuses, and he relieves her of duty, at which point she's visited by Marcus, who asks her to bring Isaac back himself, saying that he thinks he's the reason that Isaac killed himself, despite Burke trying to explain to him that when someone commits suicide, no one is to blame, but that it is normal to try and find a reason to put the blame somewhere. At that point, Marcus says he did in fact hate Isaac, but he didn't really want him to die, even though he said, "I wish he would die." So Burke then goes to engineering and helps revive Isaac. And when Isaac asks her to explain why, she refuses to answer, except to say that she didn't do it for him. So I think she felt badly that Marcus blamed himself, and in order to alleviate his guilt or improve his situation, she makes sure that Isaac is brought back just in time. The doctor then visits with Isaac to try to understand the state of his psychological well-being, which of course in a robot doesn't really exist, but she wants to know why he did what he did to help him deal with the underlying cause, which she surmises he needs to do so that he won't try to do it again. And he says that the only reason he did it is because he determined that it was necessary to resolve the detrimental effect of his presence on the crew. She then tries to explain to him that in time, the crew would have come around, and that him doing what he did had a more detrimental effect on them than his continued presence did. And, makes the point that there isn't a problem that can't be solved in time. I don't know how true that is. There are probably some that can't be solved no matter how much time goes by, but the point they're trying to make is that whatever the problem is, chances are, if you just give it time, a solution will come up. Things will change. You won't feel as badly as you feel now in perpetuity because of whatever problem or problems you're facing. And I think that was a good point to be made. I think that was just some excellent writing there. But she then makes him promise to come to her if ever he thinks about trying to deactivate himself in the future, and he agrees to do that. Marcus then goes to visit Isaac in his lab and almost approaches him to say something, but doesn't seem to know just yet how to talk to him after observing him for a moment and trying to muster some words. So he ends up leaving, not having talked to him, but it's clear from his, facial expressions that he does intend to try again soon. And that's where the episode ends. And, not that anyone is the least bit surprised who's seen this show before, but this episode was fantastic. Fantastic. And it really highlights the difference between real drama, real poignancy, and melodrama, which is what Star Trek Discovery has been since day one, which is what Picard is maybe to a lesser extent, and which is what makes those shows so bad. They don't understand how to do drama in a way that isn't ridiculous. They don't know how to portray poignancy or to evoke, poignancy, or to depict it, I should say, over there at Discovery and Picard. But at the Orville, they do, just like they did on Next Generation, just like they did at Deep Space Nine, and other Star Trek shows. So this show is just a breath of fresh air. It's the stories contain drama that's created by basic setup and execution, and by the realistic depiction of interpersonal human relations, which on Discovery are overwrought and absurd, and which don't work, and which make you go, ugh. So I don't know. I've been saying this from the beginning, that Orville is a better Star Trek show than what we've been getting in terms of live action Trek until Strange New Worlds, which is actually pretty good, but we're going to get to that. So I don't know. It's just the most bizarre thing to me that one group of people gets it and another group of people don't get it. I mean, I don't know. Maybe that shouldn't surprise me. But, you're doing Star Trek and you're messing it up. But the people who are doing a Star Trek homage are doing it correctly, are doing Star Trek better than you, because they understand how to write correctly. So, I just say thank goodness for this show. That's all I can say. In a world where the best live action Star Trek we have still comes with a handful of issues, this show is excellent Star Trek by another name. And like I said, it's an unbelievable joke that someone other than the people doing actual Star Trek are doing better Star Trek by another name than them. It's just insane. Now, the argument could be made that some of the turns that this story takes are a little convenient. Conveniently, the person who hates Isaac the most is the one that saves him. Conveniently, it needed to be done in a short period of time because of certain factors, so that, she feels the pressure to do it. But it's okay to have conveniences in a story when they aren't flat out contrivances. And what makes something contrived in a show or what have you is when the setup is poor, or when there isn't any setup, which Discovery is guilty of. They have poor setup for their contrivances. They do it in a way that's ham-fisted and sloppy. They don't lay the groundwork to pull off these conveniences that they have in their plots. Whereas the Orville does. They understand how to set up something that's convenient to the plot so that it works without staring you in the face as an out and out contrivance. It feels more organic. I mean, if you're smart at all, you go, okay, they gave us that line earlier in the episode and depicted that event earlier in the episode to set up this moment where something ties back to that, and you go, oh, wow. So, it's not like the audience is blind to it, but it's done with craftsmanship, not a giant hammer or, a big old ham fist, just dropping it on you in a way that you go, oh, come on, that's so contrived. But Discovery does that all the time. That's why it gets so much crap. Anyway, the Orville's back. This is a great episode. The lady playing the doctor, who, if I'm not mistaken, was Sisko's wife on Deep Space Nine, right? She was excellent in this episode. She deserves an Emmy, flat out. And the kid playing Marcus did a really good job as well. So, and the younger kid did as well. He just wasn't in it very much, but his moments were well acted. Unlike, we're going to get to it, unlike the little girl who plays Leia in Obi-Wan, who can't really act, these kids can act. So, I don't know, it doesn't take much to see the difference between good acting and bad acting, and good story writing and bad story writing. But anyway, that was my review of the premiere of season 3 of The Orville. I will be back with reviews of the other episodes as they are released. For now, I take my leave, and until then, I wish you peace and long life.